Perfect. So I'd like to introduce your moderator today, Monica Toporkiewica from the U.S. Commercial Service, who will be moderating this session today. Take it away, Monica, and we'll stop screen sharing and spotlight the panel. And then if all the other panels could please turn on your videos, we'll start spotlighting. Perfect.
Great. Thank you, Zara. Thank you for your time and for helping to organize such an amazing day of breakout sessions for this Women's Virtual Funding Summit. My name is Monica Toporkiewica. I am with the U.S. Commercial Service in our Chicago office. I will be moderating today's panel of fabulous speakers. And as Terry Batch, my colleague, mentioned, let the magic begin and continue throughout the day. This is the best way I think you can interact, learn, and share information that you will receive throughout the day. And so as a reminder, you do not have to stay in this particular session for the entire 45 minutes. You could click back and forth between the blue session or the pink session as you find information interesting, and feel free to rejoin us if you wish. And so for our first speaker, who you had the pleasure of hearing her short introduction, we do have from SBA, since this is the SBA loan session with KeyBank, we have Jennifer Ringenbach. Jennifer, if you'd like to take it away and either reintroduce yourself and continue on. Thank you.
Sure, thanks, Monica. So I'm Jennifer Ringenbach, I kind of mentioned in the original Zoom. So I'm a bit of a veteran here in the SBA world. I actually worked for the SBA straight out of college. I fell into it through my previous employment. So I kind of fell into it, loved it, have stayed with it for all of this time. So I spent 4 years there. I moved over to the CDC that works with the SBA's 504 program. Spent a couple of years there, got some experience then at a community bank doing traditional conventional SBA and community or consumer loans. And then I just in August, I hit my 20-year mark here at KeyBank. So I have been working here in this role for 20 years. Some people will say that means I'm not very ambitious, but I like to say that it's just a new thing every single day. So 20 years later, I am still learning about different businesses, different owners, different circumstances, different issues. I'm still in awe of the entrepreneurs, especially women, who are willing to take these risks that come along with the business ownership. And I just really enjoy meeting those business owners and hearing their stories. I love watching, I love learning about their different businesses and watching business owners like my colleague Lesleigh here, who has successfully navigated the ups and downs of business ownership and have continued to grow. It kind of feels good for me to be a part of that transition, or that growth. My goal today, I'll go on for a minute. My goal today is, I work for KeyBank and we are in 15 states. We're not everywhere, and I know there are people from all over the country. So my goal today is to help you learn how to access capital through these SBA programs, whether it be through my bank or another. So I'm going to not focus so much on myself and my bank, but just the programs in general, and hope that my answers and my experiences and my opinions will give some guidance to you.
Thank you, Jennifer. And Lesleigh Watson with, excuse me, with BlackPoint. If you can also introduce yourself briefly before we get into
I have to say, to start, I didn't know you're only in 15 states, so I've already learned something today. My name is Lesleigh Watson, and I am the co-owner of BlackPoint IT Services. And we purchased that company, gosh, 18 years ago, and have taken it from a simple break fix company, meaning just doing laptop repairs, printer repairs, doing a bit of IT work, to a company now that's about 18 million. Then we do outsource IT services, take care of your network, your help desk, your security, anything to do with your network. And we've done a lot of that growth through acquisition, where the SBA really comes in handy for us. So it's been a great learning experience over the past 19 years, because that is how long our relationship is with Jennifer.
Thank you, Lesleigh. So between the two of you, Jennifer, you can lead the way in terms of how you are involved with providing businesses that are already exporting and have international sales and are looking to grow, since this is the track that we are highlighting, where SBA loans have been the most useful, and how to go about applying for them too.
Sure. I believe I'm focusing more on just SBA lending in general, and there's another a lender who is going to be focused on export. So definitely we have programs available throughout the SBA. Again, I'm talking to businesses I think are established and ready to grow. So I use the 7A program for like businesses like Lesliegh's to continue to expand through acquisitions. I have used it for people who are kind of ready to buy their own piece of real estate and expand in that way. That's the 504 program or the 7A, and I've used it just to help people when maybe they have a larger contract that they're getting ready for, but they need more working capital to support that contract. So we have all kinds of different programs. The SBA does to assist with any kind of growth that you're really looking to achieve within your business.
In terms of having more information, do you find that it's helpful for a company to go direct to your office and your colleagues, or work through other local partners or banks, such as the U.S. Commercial Service in their particular city?
I think it depends on the circumstances and what exactly they're going for. I always recommend that you work with your lender that you already have an established relationship with, and work with them first. And hopefully they're aware, and if they're truly involved in SBA programs, they're aware of other organizations that might provide assistance as well. So I would hope that people like Lesleigh would come to me when they're looking for expansion first, and we can work together to find the best route that's available to them. And that could be an SBA loan, it could be specifically a direct loan from organizations like yours and an Exim Bank and everything. So I think that coming to that, building that relationship with your lender is important too, as you continue to grow. And, we should be one of your trusted advisors in the group of people that you pull together to have discussions about the best way to expand.
A question, and as I see questions pop up in the chat, I'll just ask them directly and not wait till the end in case that person decides to pop off. And so one question is, are there any loan programs that help with revenue that is less than $10,000 a month? Is there a minimum threshold, or can you expand?
Yeah, the SBA Express programs can do that. We work through those through our retail branches, and they can do those smaller loans. And definitely, I'll work with borrowers who are just starting, so anywhere from $0 in revenues to 10 million and more in revenue. So there are definitely programs out there. Some of them are directly with the SBA, some of them are offshoots of the SBA that can do that. I think there's some tracks to talk about smaller loans like that as well within this series.
Thank you. How about we shift to Lesleigh, if you can share more about how your business went about introducing yourself, or were you referred to SBA in terms of the initial interaction, and then where it went from there, and the time frame? Is this a 6-month process or a 6-year process? Since you referenced you're 19 years into it, how often do you touch and connect with SBA lending programs?
Sure. So it kind of started, both my husband and I were working at Microsoft, and we had a young family and had decided that probably wasn't the direction we wanted to continue going. And so what did we want to do next? And what we did was started looking at all sorts of different businesses, whether it be chains or franchises or standalones, or do we want to start something all by ourselves? Needless to say, we didn't have a ton of capital, very little collateral. But we eventually kind of got through the process with the business broker and settled on an IT services firm, where we're both from Microsoft. And while we don't have a ownership background, we did have a lot of background in running projects, running people, and had the technology. So our business broker suggested that we connect with KeyBank, and that was 19 years ago. And that first negotiation, or the first time we went through it, they kind of did an evaluation of us and recommended that we would not be a good fit for a conventional loan, but would be a good fit for the SBA. So from there, it was a steep learning curve, because it's the first thing, our first acquisition was buying a company for us, which was an existing company, which I definitely think helped. We went through a ton of process learning, they had to come and learn about us financially and the company and the synergies. Why do we want to do it? Where are we going? And as part of that SBA process, we learned a ton. That particular deal took close to a year. Wasn't all the SBA issues. It was more the negotiation process. And, after that, we have done what, Jennifer, 6, 7 acquisitions with you?
Yeah, it's about that.
And a few that have fallen through. And I can tell you, every time we do it, there is a certain length. It's not going to happen tomorrow or a month from now. If you're going into it thinking that's going to be quick and dirty, it's not. It does take several months. But what I would encourage everyone who wants to consider something like this, be straightforward and honest. Give everything up front. Because as they go through looking at everything into your backgrounds, financially, your business, they're going to find it. And if you don't come forth and tell them what's going on, that raises red flags, and the chance of your loan going through are really slim and none. So I think they're pretty reasonable in working with you, but you have to work with them. Similarly, if you're going to go through down times, one of our worst times is going through the recession in 2008, and that was down scary. But you need to talk with your lender. You need to communicate, let them know you're struggling. If you do that, they'll help you. They want to help you. But if you start a downward slide, sometimes it's too late. Yeah. So that's kind of in a nutshell, a long part of our journey.
Yeah. I'll tag on to that. And I mean, Leslie's right. It really is about communicating and staying in play with your banker and with all of your advisors, because if you wait too long, it's too late at that point. We can't get you out of the hole that has been dug. So the sooner you can say to us, hey, we're having some issues, we can start to look at opportunities for you, lines of credit or other things that might help you, or restructuring, payment deferrals, or anything that might help you get through a difficult period. But if you try to go through that on your own, it's going to be a lot more of a struggle to do that. So I definitely would, encourage you to be open and honest and talk with us. Sometimes it's scary. You don't want to tell a bank that you're struggling, but in the end, it's definitely better. And I think the other thing to do is to recognize that, sometimes people are going to say no. And sometimes people take that no and get offended and run off and say, fine, I'll find it somewhere else. And that's completely your opportunity to do that. But I would just highly recommend that if someone's saying no, there's probably a reason for the no, and it's something that you should at least consider and take into consideration what they've said, why they're saying no, what they see as an issue, and say, okay, is there a way I can strengthen this? Is this truly an issue for me? Or do I think I'm okay? And sometimes there's going to be differences of opinions, but to just ignore somebody who's saying no to you, I think is not in your best interest as a business owner. And to be able to find success, you have to be able to take the no's and the criticisms and the encouragements and the suggestions to heart, and to really focus on those as well.
Jennifer, I'd even say it's not even necessarily criticism. It's just constructive feedback, because we all are learning every day. Being a business owner or wanting to be a potential business owner, you have to be able to go with the flow, and things are going to come at you, or your past is going to jump up, but it's okay. Like, work through it and take that feedback for what it is, trying to make you better so that you can then go into this relationship and be successful.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that's great feedback, Jennifer. Just because one will say no, come back and ask why. I mean, as parents, how many times does your child ask why after you specifically say, no, you cannot do this? Or to your spouse or to your partner, whoever. No is not the end of the conversation. That's just the beginning of understanding, well, why? Why not? Give me more information. I mean, ideally, they'll give you the information so you could come back and have a better proposal or better just details. Maybe the details were there, they just were not part of that plan. And so one question I had was, does a company need to have a very detailed business plan for you to, yes, of course, we assume there should be a plan. It's just not that I have a great idea, I slept on it, and the dream last night revealed to me this business proposition. But to what degree is the business plan something that can be tweaked and helped by, the bank versus, sorry, see me in 6 months with a better plan? Is there that kind of a hand-holding?
Yeah, and I think you'll find my answer a lot is it depends. And it kind of depends on what you're trying to accomplish. So I'm going to look for a detailed business plan when you're either starting up or when you're completely taking on a new line of business within yours. You're just kind of growing it into a different area. So I want to know, I'm going to want that, how are you planning to do this transition? How are you planning to focus on your existing operations and then still do this growth? If you're just trying to buy a piece of property and to expand that way and to grow, that's, maybe a little bit less information needed. But that's always critical for you. And I would say, as a business owner, one of the, well, from a lender perspective, one of the things I see a lot that always troubles me is when people provide projections, but the projections were prepared by someone else, like an accountant. I am all for bringing in an accountant and other people to help you, but you are the one responsible for those numbers. You're responsible for your employees and you're responsible for everything. So if you can't tell us what those numbers mean, if I ask you a question and you have to put me on hold and call your accountant on the side and ask them what it means, that's nothing I would ever recommend. I mean, you really have to understand it's not what you love. It's not why you got into business because of the numbers, but it's critical if you want to stay in success. So I would say with respect to business plans, those projections are really important. And I know a lot of them are guesses, but you have to start somewhere and you have to have an idea of where do I need to be to make sure I'm successful. My numbers aren't going to come in exactly, they never will come in exactly where you project, but they'll give you an idea of where you stand in things and how you're progressing, and if you're going to meet those goals and if you're going to meet payroll the next week and everything else. So it's very critical in that respect. And that's what I look for when I'm looking at people who are trying to expand. So.
Thank you. Speaking of numbers, a question in the chat box came up, and this is regarding the SBA 7A secured loan that you referenced. What are the typical amounts? And is the amount based on income? And if so, what other factors are considered?
The amount's not based on income. That's the thing about SBA is they're looking for the use of proceeds. So they're always going to look for what you need. Now, if you say you need $1 million, but you're only generating, $50,000 in revenues, those numbers aren't gonna work. So, we need to be reasonable about what you're requesting. If you're looking to expand and grow, I would say that the number one thing you want to do is make sure before you expand that you're operating successfully at your level right now. You can't come to a bank and say, "Oh, I know I'm in the red, but if you just give me $100,000 more and I can grow this other side, I'm going to be successful." So I would say. And I'm off track with your question, so I'm sorry. I'll circle back to it. But I would say that the numbers can be any size. So there are definitely programs that are 500,000 or under that kind of are less documentation and less stringent on the rules, and then the ones as you get larger are going to be a little bit more involved with that. So it's all about what you need and what somebody might need $1 million for a real estate, or they might need $100,000 for working capital, but you need to come to the bank and have an idea of what it is you're going to need. You can't come to the bank and say, "How much can you give me?" Because that's not really what we're looking for. We're looking for what do you need to get to that next level that you want to be at, and what kind of financing do you need? Inventory? Do you need working capital? Do you need to make some improvements to your building so you can be more efficient in your operation? So you need to come with a plan of what you need and why it's going to get you where you want to be, and then we can talk about whether or not you're going to be able to generate the income to support that debt. Does that make sense?
It does.
I think, Jennifer, too, just based on our current experience, that going to you for $X for whatever, while it's not always a yes, it's not always a no either. There can be different ways to handle it, putting more of your capital in, leveraging different assets. So you have to really be open to the conversation and looking at, I don't want to say workarounds, but ways to work with the bank to make it work for you, because it's not all just a free handout.
Yeah, that's a
creative
great
solutions, as I'd like to say.
Exactly. That's exactly.
Creative solutions. Yeah. So that's a great point, Leslie. And we do that all the time. We restructure and refigure and see what's gonna work. Maybe I can't lend quite this much, but we can do this much right now, and then grow, as we need to. So it is a learning, it is a relationship that you build, and the more you're open to providing information and being open to suggestions, the better time you're going to have kind of finding a way to get to where you want to be. That's our goal, is to help you be successful and help you to grow, to be as large or as not large as you want to be. So that's what we want to do.
A follow-up to that question, is there a typical repayment period and interest rates, or is it very specific to each loan application?
It's specific to the use of proceeds. So SBA is always use of proceeds driven. So if you're using money, if you need working capital cash, usually it's a 7 to 10 year term loan. If you're, same thing for inventory. If you're buying equipment, it could be 10, maybe 15 years, depending on the life of that equipment. If it's real estate, it can go as long as 25 years. So again, it's just, and then if you're doing a bunch of it all together, we'll kind of blend it out and see where we can get you in the longest term to help keep that cash flow down. So the good thing about SBA loans is those loans that are under 15 years have no prepayment penalty. And even if they're over 15 years, you still have options to prepay portions of it without incurring the penalty. So the more we can stretch it out and keep your payment low, the more flexibility you have to make larger payments when you have a boon of money, or you don't have that requirement if you want to use that cash to expand and to fund your growth. So
another question, I think I know the answer. Do you service companies on the East Coast and West Coast and Midwest, basically?
We spread across the nation. So we're, I think I even wrote down which states we're technically in. So I think somebody asked about Maryland, and I don't believe Maryland is one of them. There's Massachusetts and Connecticut, Vermont, New York over there on the East Coast. We've got Ohio, of course, and then a lot of them over in the West and a couple in the middle of the country as well. So, but the SBA programs are available to anybody, and I would certainly be willing to help you connect with somebody who could assist, even if I'm not able to.
Thank you. A different question. So the loans are available for manufactured products, correct, as well as services. In terms of companies that provide services. In this case, the question is regarding developing apartments. And I assume if the question can be further clarified, if it's building apartment buildings or providing the management of the property. And the question is that financing available in the Caribbean and Puerto Rico? So Puerto Rico is part of the US, but the Caribbean completely separate market.
Well, let's just start with the whole apartment. So SBA isn't involved in residential lending. So if you're trying to get funding to build or own an apartment or to lease out long-term rentals, that actually isn't one of the eligible uses of SBA funds. It's more seen as an investment than an actual small business. So, and I know that view can be taken differently, but that's just the way they've taken it. So we don't actually fund the construction of it. Now, if you're a property management firm and you don't own the properties, you just kind of run the management of it, that could be considered eligible, but it's not there for people who build or own and rent out. And it's even for commercial buildings. If you own a commercial building, but you don't occupy it yourself, and you're just renting it out, that's considered an investment. So those things aren't eligible either for SBA. And as far as the Caribbean, if it's a U.S. territory, and I'm sorry, I'm really bad with with that, right, geography and everything right now. But if it's, we can do lending in different areas, so within the U.S.
And oftentimes people and companies who sell to Puerto Rico, whether it's products or services, assume it's a different country, and it is not. So it is part of the U.S. territory. So there are different rules, whether it's SBA versus EXIM, in terms of the amount of U.S. content in a manufactured good, right? If it's made in the U.S., it doesn't have to be 100% made, but there's a certain minimum threshold. And that also applies to Puerto Rico. And then once the item is sold beyond our territories, the Caribbean or elsewhere, it sometimes depends on the local country's import regulations and other rules. So very unique to each market that one will sell something. So don't assume it's universal across the globe. Scrolling down to some other questions. There was a clarification that SBA does not finance to U.S. territories. So in that case, the example of Puerto Rico. So
I'll have to, yes, and I can double check on that and confirm, but it's not something where we have a footprint. So I've never actually had to answer that question. So, but thanks, that's something for me to be aware of.
Regarding a question, what would be your suggestion, and maybe Leslie as well, as Jennifer can chime in, first step for female minority-owned business in Detroit, Michigan, if you have Detroit, Michigan connections or not?
I'm sorry, the question was your first step in trying to obtain financing?
Correct.
Do you want to start, Leslie? You look like you might be.
Well, I'm not a female minority-owned business, so we did look into that at one time for advantages that it could come at. So I would think part of that is really understanding what you want to do and what is your business plan. Are you going to truly do this on your own, or are you going to have partners?
Yeah.
Because for me, I partner with my husband. We both kind of do this equitably. To do the designation for us, it really would have relegated him to a minority job, if you will. He couldn't have participated to the level that he is as CEO and me as COO. So it was really going to change that. So I think the first thing is to look into a women-owned business. There's a lot of resources out there.
Yeah.
I think it just takes some time and research. And Jennifer, I'm sure that there are different programs as well that will kind of take a look at that, but research.
There are, I know here in Washington State, there's an Office of Minority Women Business-Owned Enterprises, and I assume there's similar things. So, KeyBank does have a footprint in Michigan, and somebody else in the chat asked about Colorado, and we do have a footprint there in Colorado as well. But there are definitely organizations that will focus on women's and business-owned enterprises. The SBA tends, we take that, we try to assist minorities as much as we can. And there's definitely 8A contracting and other opportunities for minorities. As far as regular 7A lending, there's not a lot of specific programs just designed for minority, but there are partnerships we can do with other organizations too that can help and tie things in together. I've done some linked deposit programs and some other things where it saves some interest rates. So there are opportunities, and I can certainly work with you to help find some resources for you from wherever you're coming from.
Also, may I add, even though I'm based in Chicago with the U.S. Commercial Service, we have offices all over the U.S., Detroit included, and other cities in Michigan and the Midwest and beyond. And these international trade specialists, like myself, we're not tied to any one bank or any financing institution. We are there to help counsel startups, current exporting type of companies, and resources beyond what we provide in programs. And so it could be a women's business development center. These are under the small business development centers of the SBA, right? They could be a combination of a nonprofit association in a particular city or state funded. The state of Michigan, for example, has programs and offices dedicated as well. So it does take some online sleuthing and searching, but connecting with our commercial service in any particular state, trade.gov, .gov is a great way to start in identifying those offices and specialists like myself. Regarding a question, at what point should a company reach out to, for example, to KeyBank or other banks when they're hoping to get a big contract awarded in the next 12 months? So the contract has not been awarded yet, but they're looking and waiting. Is it good to give a heads up and start the relationship with your?
Yeah, I don't know that 12 months is necessarily, you need to go quite that far out in advance. We're going to be looking for current financial information and everything, but I think it's always good to start a conversation and let a banker know kind of where you're headed and what you see down the pipeline. We can start looking at your financials right now and seeing if you're in, if there's so many red flags that might cause some issues with you getting the funding that you need down the road. We can start talking about different programs. So 12 months, you can, maybe 6 to 9 months, or, I would say more like the 6-month figure probably, but you can start out whenever you want. It's never a bad time to have a conversation for future plans with your banker.
I do have an additional comment Leslie was mentioning. Sometimes you don't share everything up front with your lender that your company has gone through or you're just embarrassed about. And from my perspective, when I'm counseling clients, I don't expect them to give me an update. Usually I have to reach out to them maybe every quarter, every 6 months, once a year, depending on how active they are with the information that they've received. But I do find it, when they do give me the feedback, oh, this was too difficult, or I called and left a message or an email, and I'm like, did you try again? No. Well, did you, they waited 12 months to tell me the problem that happened so long ago. Whereas if the feedback was given sooner, and I know typical daily operations and managing a company, there's so much going on and wearing of multiple hats. It's not just international, it's the marketing and maybe the shipping, the logistics and everything else in between 3 people. Takes a lot of time, but that small amount of feedback could really help open doors, because maybe there's a creative solution that one of us or our local partners can provide and say, you know what, that person retired. That's why you didn't receive any information. And here's your new contact. Or that person didn't speak English and you're trying to reach them. Sorry, they didn't speak that language of that you're reaching them out in. And if we had known, we could provide and facilitate with the communication. So sooner than later is always best with any kind of feedback, whether it's positive or negative, because we're here with so many resources around the country to provide, valuable information. So let us know, and we won't report it anywhere because we're not, that's not what we do.
Right.
I think you bring up actually a really good thing on resources. I think as women, sometimes we think we have to know everything before we can do something. And there are a ton of resources out there. Monica just brought up a bunch, but take the time to take a look. And what I would encourage everyone to do is to build your network as well. Find people that do what you do. Find people, men, women, doesn't matter, that you can connect with, that you can talk through. Find people that aren't going to always just tell you yes to your ideas or thoughts. They're actually going to give you constructive feedback. No isn't no. We talked about that before. It's a great opportunity to learn. So leverage different things like the U.S. Commercial Services. Leverage talking to Jennifer at KeyBank. Leverage that person that you met through a deal. Just really get out there, because there is so much, and then they can help you focus in on, well, why didn't you call back? It's more just mentoring, if you will.
Yeah,
But it's a huge thing.
And there are organizations like the Small Business Development Centers and SCORE and other that can offer those, consultation and really help you focus on things you need to learn, because a no isn't, like Leslie was saying, a no isn't always a no. It's just a not right now kind of a thing. And that we're the goal is to help you get that no to a yes. It just might not be right when you want it, but that's okay. It'll get there, and we just need to work together. So there are lots of counseling opportunities.
No isn't bad.
No is bad. It's just not yet. We have about 10 minutes left before this session closes, and I'd like to ask you, Leslie, if you can provide any kind of advice for how to either, like you already mentioned, grow your network.
Yeah.
And if there's something unique that you wish you had known, 18 years ago, or even 5 years ago, pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, what a difference in terms of operating a business and maintaining, any tips we would welcome.
First and foremost is believe in yourself. Go for it. I think we're often risk averse, and so we're not willing to put ourselves out there and take that chance. I can tell you hands down, I was that person when we started this journey 20 years ago, kind of looking at it. And I see the journey now that I have, my growth through that journey, and it's night and day. Part of that is just getting out there and doing it. Part of that is my network. We did talk about the network. We did talk about resources available, but the biggest thing, you're going to make mistakes. And you know what? It's okay. Learn from them, grow from them. You're going to have a bad year. It's okay. Learn from it, grow from it, and listen to the people that you've surrounded yourself with. But always surround yourself with advisors that can come at you from different perspectives. I don't want the same person like Jennifer and her counterpart at the office. I want to kind of build that around. Throw yourself out there into networking, meet people, leverage them. You'll be surprised at how many people are really willing to help you. I mean, I've grown up being a business owner through my network that I had to start from zero, so I think those are some of the big things. Always do an analysis on cash flow. That's really, really important. And yeah, I think those are the big things.
Monica, I'll say, even I need a network of people, and I just use my network to find out on the side, in case you heard me tapping away. U.S. territories are eligible. So the applicant must be located and primarily operate in the U.S., including its territories and possessions. So that's an answer to that question right out of the SBA's operating procedures. And subject to my little network of people that I know that could get me an answer quickly that I can provide to you guys. So.
Thank you, Jennifer. In terms of growing your network, how we've all been in front of Zoom screens and other virtual presentations and network and learning opportunities. Have you found that the traditional old school in-person, networking is still best, or some combination thereof? For different reasons, there's obviously good pros and cons to both types of networking. Do you have any tips in that type of pursuit?
For me, I think Zoom is great for kind of that introductory, but I want to be able to sit across from you and kind of get that body language and have that nuances. Because unless you're in a Zoom with two people, it's really tough because you've got different things going on, or Monica said something that this person would love to ask her, but this person's, you know, it can get really challenging. I know for myself in some of the activities that I've had to take on in the last 18 months, being in person has been so much better. You have that connection and it makes a difference. Yes, you can still use Zoom. I mean, it's been our lifesaver, right, over the last 2 years. But I think it has to be a good hybrid approach. Do what makes you feel comfortable, but start slow. And it's okay. Most people do want to help you. You just got to ask for help. That's another thing I'd probably say, be willing to ask for help.
And I found, and I share this type of advice with, regardless if it's a new startup company, a recent graduate who's entrepreneurial in spirit, or someone who's been around the block many times. Connect maybe with your alumni association, wherever your education was, or that of your friends. You know, they may have a completely different circle of interesting people and experts and advisors that are not your typical way. Whether it's during the holidays and you're over the cocktails and appetizers, start mentioning what you're doing, and it's amazing who knows who, if it's a neighborhood community event or family friend event.
And that is too true. I was just at an event this past weekend at my son's university, and we'd invited alumni in, and I was able to talk about the program they have. Him as a sophomore is already benefiting from these folks. And then as graduates, they're all going back, and it's nothing like when I was in college. It's just amazing what you can do. And from there, you branch out.
The parents of your children and the other network is just as important as your typical professional traditional service provider.
And again, you know, if your kid plays sports, get out there, talk to the parents, because again, who are you going to meet?
Go to the games, but don't watch the game. Go talk.
Go talk. Go to your neighborhood things. When you're not looking for that focused business network, you'd be amazed at what you'll develop. I mean, it's incredible.
That's true. There's a question. Thank you. I totally agree. The network is so much more than just your immediate business contacts. And a question for Lesleigh. Do you have any resources for the acquisition of business that you could share, whether it's now or offline directly? They are curious to know.
Yeah, I think part of that would be the type of acquisition you're looking at. So I think that'd probably be easier to have a conversation offline, because it can go down any number of different paths.
And I don't see any further questions here. So if Jennifer, you'd like to add any?
I have one thing I wanted to add. Is I know Lesleigh was talking about different advisors from different areas coming out, or from different sides of things. And I can't tell you how important that is. Just from my experience as a lender, accountants and lenders are sometimes coming from the opposite ends. The accountant wants to reduce income and reduce taxes. The lender wants to see more income and more. So it's important to involve everybody, so we can look at a good balance of where you're going to be, so you can be prepared to grow, but also, you know, take advantage of some write-offs and some other things. So I think it is, like to Leslie's points, just to make sure you are surrounding yourself with people from all areas who can give you advice from every angle. You can make the best decisions.
Yes. And so thank you, because it makes a difference. You just don't know how much information is out there, and what kind of questions can come up. And if there's questions that, in my personal experience, you know, even though my title is International Trade Specialist, I am not a specialist of any one thing, but I am gladly available to direct and refer to other experts and specialists, whether they are in a particular sector, whether it's a certain industry and someone is looking to grow their products and their sales in an industry, or in general in the services that they're looking to offer. There's a lot of amazing people in any particular part of the country. And the resources are not only state level, federal level, private, non-for-profit, and it's overwhelming, to say the least, if one would do an online search, you know, women business resources, something generic. Well, that could lead you down a rabbit hole, and you don't know where to start. And then you go back to your regular day job and then kind of put it on hold. But asking the questions and having one person provide a little tidbit of information can lead to a completely different conversation that's just as valuable. But it's about asking those questions early on. So I appreciate everyone's time. We have about 3 minutes or so before your next session. So if there are questions that come in on the chat after the session is done, there will be a recording of this chat, and any follow-up communication will be held as well. And for that, I'd like to say thank you very much to Jennifer and Leslie for your time, your great insight and sharing of what you've done and what you continue to do. So thank you. Passing it back to Zara.
Thank you.
I forgot to unmute myself, but thank you for all our speakers for a great breakout session. And I think for this session, it's just a reminder, use your relationships, like what Jennifer had mentioned earlier. Work with your current bank and work with them, build that relationship. Talk to the Monicas in your state. So I sent the link in the chat box to figure out who your Monica in your state, which means who is your U.S. Commercial Service Officer or your office in the state. Talk to different resources. So let us know if you have questions. I will be staying in this room the whole time and try to put the links in the chat box. But also, as Monica said, we will be sharing the recording for this, both for this room and the pink room, and we will be sending that via email as a follow-up. So thank you all. I am pausing this for now.